All right, so hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today I'm bringing you guys another Star Wars story interview with someone who I went to high school with, but I don't think we ever talked before today. So I'm excited to not only talk some Star Wars, but excited to meet my guest today, Darian Scalamoni. Say hello to everyone, Darian.
What's up, everybody? How you doing?
And some background into how this all started. Darian recently started a blog, Instagram page titled Cinema Wave Media. Definitely go check that out and follow if you can. And he does news, reviews, reactions to the latest movies and TV. He's on top of it. It's a really great page. And he posted a video kind of getting excited for Mandalorian Season 3. And he had the Mando helmet on. He had a Grogu doll. And I was like, yeah, this guy knows game. This guy loves Star Wars. I got to bring him on the podcast to talk. So wanted to support a fellow creator and also wanted to hear a Star Wars story. So I'm really excited for today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I think that we talked a little bit before we started recording, but I have a very interesting relationship with Star Wars. So I'm really excited to jump in and talk about everything Star Wars and the little, even some of the things that I feel like I don't know enough about. I'd love to pick your brain on a little bit.
Oh yeah, I love the knowledge share. I love to give you guys everything I know. So I definitely want to just dive in right there and ask, what is your relationship with Star Wars? I know you said you're not a diehard fan, but you keep up with it. So what would you describe your relationship with Star Wars as?
I think that over time it's grown, and I think that's because I wasn't I was born right before the prequels came out. So I didn't. The first Star Wars movie I ever saw in theaters was Revenge of the Sith. And it was the first Star Wars movie I ever saw, which was a very interesting introduction into everything as well. Because at least in my opinion, I don't know the opinion of the audience, but for me, I think Revenge of the Sith is the best film of the prequels. So coming into that, it was a really interesting introduction to the galaxy, the lore, everything like that, because I hadn't even seen anything from the original trilogy. But in terms of my fandom, I think it's grown over time, especially because of some of the minds that they've brought in. I'm a huge Jon Favreau fan, even pre-Star Wars. So having him be like the creative overhang of what Mandalorian is, along with Dave Filoni, that's something that has grown over time. And some of the shows I've really enjoyed, some of them I haven't enjoyed as much. And even the I guess it's the sequel trilogy, I have a very love-hate relationship with as well. So I would kind of categorize myself as not a diehard, but someone that knows enough about the lore and is actively trying to learn more.
Awesome. Hey, that's all you can ask for is someone who's ready to learn and isn't scrutinizing it every step of the way. So when you watched The Revenge of the Sith, did you go back to the beginning of the prequels after that, or did you go right into the original trilogy?
So I'm trying to remember because again, it was a long time ago. So I was about 11, I think, when Revenge of the Sith came out. And I do remember, again, it's not, this is a spoiler alert for the people who haven't seen Revenge of the Sith, but if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you've seen the movie. But it was kind of like I figured everything out in a weird way. And again, you understand because at the end of the movie you have that reveal of Anakin putting on the Vader costume and everything. But it was more so that it wasn't like I was like, oh, I know this story now. It was just like, man, that movie was really good, and now I just feel like I don't need to go back and watch. So it was weird. I didn't jump right into Star Wars after that. And we talked a little bit beforehand, not that I do have a really deep love and admiration for Star Wars, but Marvel's kind of my bag. And Marvel started just a couple of years after Revenge of the Sith did. So I was kind of seeing, and then you had that big gap in movies in the theaters. So in terms of my way of watching them, I'm pretty sure what I did was I winded up watching Revenge of the Sith, and then I think I actually went back and watched the first two prequel movies. And then years later, I watched the original trilogy. Wow. But I think the cool thing about it is that those movies really, really hold up. And I think that, again, in terms of, and I know we'll get to the ranking later, but those three movies to me are it's still the quintessential trilogy. And I know there's some people that grow up with everything else, but to me, it's it's not even comparable in terms of the way that the other trilogies kind of played out. There's such peaks and valleys, and you kind of have more of a smooth takeoff and landing in terms of the way that the original trilogy hits, even decades after it came out. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And so what would you say caused your love for Star Wars to continue to grow, saying that you started with Revenge of the Sith and then took a break and then saw the originals, and then after the originals, it seems like you might have taken a break or kind of watched the sequels. What was that moment that really Star Wars started to elevate for you?
I think I had a really interesting viewing experience for The Force Awakens.
Hmm.
And I think it was because it was a movie that I don't often, I love movies. I see a lot of movies every year in theaters, but it's not very often that I go to the theater multiple times to see a movie. I love physical media. I own like over 300 Blu-rays. Like I'll buy the movies that I love and I'll rewatch them there, but I don't usually go to the theater to see a movie multiple times. Force Awakens is one of like only about 10 to 12 movies I saw 3 times in the theater. And every viewing experience was different for me. And seeing when I first saw the movie, I saw it in IMAX, and it was the second IMAX movie I've ever seen. And just that immersive experience of feeling like, and a lot of people talk about how it feels like episode 7 is a retread of A New Hope. To me, that didn't matter because for someone who was, I wouldn't, again, I wouldn't categorize myself as a casual fan, but somebody that was just kind of building themselves up for it. I was so excited to have Star Wars in the theater and to experience that again because it was so long since Revenge of the Sith that it just built something up into me. So that was kind of how I felt like things started to escalate a little bit. And again, the way that the rest of the sequel trilogy plays out, I don't love it. But when Mandalorian came along again, that was something else where it was like a slice of life. It felt very much like what Star Wars should feel like. And I'm sure you understand. There's a very distinct feeling that you have with good Star Wars. And then it's like you have that really bad dry mouth effect after you watch something that's bad Star Wars, you know? It's like there are elements of this that I really love, but if they changed the writing or they changed one story direction, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series, for example, is something that I was so excited for. Ewan is such a fantastic actor, McGregor, and I just felt like there were so many storytelling decisions that didn't work for me, and that was upsetting. And I feel like with Star Wars, there's a really big drop off if something is not good, let alone with other sort of franchises or just movies. Like there's this nostalgic feeling that you get when you watch something that's Star Wars. So for me, in terms of, again, my fandom is always solid, but I feel like my emotions are so out of whack with Star Wars because, and I think this is kind of telling of the way that it's been Lucasfilm the last couple decades, maybe there's just no order and it doesn't feel like there's a real direction. And again, Marvel's kind of in this weird state right now with Feige, but Feige was a rock for like almost 2 decades. So it's interesting, my Star Wars fandom. Like I said, I think I reached an apex with Force Awakens, and then I reached a second apex with Mandalorian. And now again, I'm riding this weird wave recently because I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I wasn't a huge fan of season 3. And again, it leaves that taste in my mouth where I'm like, damn, man, like I really want more, but I don't understand even what I just watched. Like I feel like we didn't accomplish anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to chew on for that response. The movie part of it is huge for me because Star Wars in a movie theater, I know movies have become events nowadays, but Star Wars in a movie theater is next level type of event for people, for the culture, and Disney needs to get a good Star Wars movie in the movie theater as soon as possible. I know they just announced 3, but that first one that they have slated for 2025 has to be good. It has to be good, or else there's going to be a lot of people that drop off of Star Wars. Obviously not me, but I know that the casual fandom, it's very hard to not only keep up with everything going on in Star Wars, but to trust it because, like you said, there's a lot of peaks and valleys with this content, especially content like Obi-Wan Kenobi, which should be an easy slam dunk. I mean, you have great source material, you have great actors, and you have a great time period where there's so much darkness and so many emotions that they can cover, and they just chose to do very easy, very not that deep of a story. And it like you said, it kind of just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. You're like, man, there's so many moments that you're like, they could have done better. And I feel like a lot of Star Wars recently has felt like, okay, that's fine, but I know how much better it could be because I've seen it done better. And that's where Andor for me, I don't know about your thoughts about Andor, but Andor for me was just like this holy grail. I was like, yes, this is how great Star Wars can be when it's put in the right hands. And I love Mando season 1 and 2, of course, but Andor is that moment I was like, that can be the next level of Star Wars. That's critical acclaim, not just from people loving it, but getting a Peabody Award, a nomination for writing, which is incredible for Star Wars. So that got me really excited for the future. But we can jump right into Mando season 3 if you'd like to.
Well, I want to backtrack just for a second
Sure, yeah.
because and well I want to have a larger conversation about Andor because I agree with you wholeheartedly. To me, besides Empire Strikes Back, I would have to sit down and really think about it in terms of ranking with the shows. But Andor is probably my favorite thing besides Empire Strikes Back. Because I agree with what you're saying in terms of like there's just we'll get to it later. But I wanted to backtrack to what you were saying in terms of you're 100% right that they have to get a movie in theaters. But the problem is the last time that Lucasfilm sat down to try to come up with a plan, they kind of fucked it up. And they got into a situation where they were like, all right, and I love J.J. Abrams. I really love Rian Johnson. Like, I'm a Rian Johnson believer. I'm a Rian Johnson. Like, he made a fantastic movie that just wasn't Star Wars. And if it would have been a sci-fi movie without Star Wars attached to it, people would have loved it. But the problem was it was following up this nostalgia trip and this fact that everybody was in theater. I mean, remind me if you know off the top of your head, what year did Force Awakens come out?
2015 winter, like right in December.
So we're about at the 10-year mark since Revenge of the Sith at that point, and people are clamoring for Star Wars. There was nothing Star Wars other than games and the books, which
Clone
I know you're
Wars,
a big fan.
Clone Wars.
All right, so again, and we'll definitely get into that too, because unfortunately, like I'm one of those people, I haven't picked up on the animated stuff yet. And it's not that I have no desire to. I actually have a really deep desire to. I just feel like sometimes, especially because I love to watch everything, there's so much I'm behind on in terms of the animated stuff. I'm like, how the hell am I going to catch up? Like, I hear a lot about Rebels too, and I think Rebels is a little shorter. So I was thinking about doing Rebels first and then going back to doing Clone Wars.
I have an Excel sheet for you for Clone Wars that takes out all the filler episodes and gives you the meat and potatoes that I'll send
perfect.
to you.
I can't wait to jump in. But in terms of like again, like I should say it this way then. There was no live action content.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there's a stigma with animation too that it's all for children, and Clone Wars is a very mature sort of series based on the little that I have seen. So you had that moment where it was like, all right, they're going to pick up all the pieces and they're going to make it work. And after you saw Force Awakens, I thought even though people looking back might be like, yeah, it's almost a carbon copy of New Hope, there was a feeling amongst everyone where they were like, okay, they know where they want to be. And it wasn't even the fact that Rian Johnson made a bad movie, because I don't think he did. I just think he didn't make a Star Wars movie. And that's where there's a huge disconnect. And then they bring in J.J. Abrams, who didn't even want to do 9. And it just takes you down this whole path. And I agree with you. The next movie they come out with has to be good. But even when you're saying they announced these 3 movies at Celebration, and you're someone that's been to Celebration, they have been doing this now for years with directors, with projects, with rumored things. I mean, on my blog, I think I've reported in the last 6 years, I think I've reported on about 15 Star Wars projects that have not even come to fruition. So, and they're great, man. The people that they have on board, like I love Taika Waititi, I love Sean Levy, all these people. Who was supposed to do
Patty Jenkins,
Damon Lindelof. I mean, all these incredible creative names, but they're not in a situation right now. I think the one smart thing they did at Celebration was that timeline. And again, it's taking something from Marvel, but it's being able to set up for the audience. We have 6 different time periods that we can play around with now for the remainder of life of Star Wars and lore. And if they actually try to play along with the galaxy, then I think they're going to be in a good situation. Jumping into Mandalorian, I think that they did something that was similar to Obi-Wan, but it wasn't as jarring, because they based a lot of the story on Bo-Katan, who I love as a character. I love Katie Sackhoff in the role, and I think she did a fantastic job. But again, you get into a situation where the first 2 seasons are mostly about Din, if not all about Din and Grogu. And then he kind of becomes the side character, which, whether it's because of Pedro Pascal or not, shooting Last of Us, we don't really know, right? But again, if he's really doing mostly the voice work, why don't you have him involved in more, you know? So Mando, for me this season, the reason I feel weird about it is because the first 2 seasons, I would wake up early to watch Mando. Like I would
before work.
I would wake up and I would be excited to watch it. And there would be a lot of situations as a former school teacher. I would get up. I mean, I would start my day at 6 in the morning, and sometimes I'd wake up at 5 to watch Mando, especially because I'd want to talk to my students about it, you know?
Yeah.
But now I'm in a situation where I'm not even looking. Not, I shouldn't say I'm not looking forward to it, but it's not the same level of excitement, you know, from week to week. And I think that stuck for the first few weeks, and then it hit kind of a lull. And I was like, all right, where are they going with this? And then I felt like they stuck a landing at the end, but there's still a lot that left to be desired, you know?
Yeah, I think Moff Gideon just was very nerfed. I feel like in the first two seasons, I was so excited to see him back on screen, and then he doesn't really amount to much, and there wasn't much rhyme or reason to him coming back. It didn't feel like he had this grand plan. He was just on Mandalore waiting, and then he gets beaten. And I know there's some people out there that are like, "Oh, that was a clone. That wasn't really him because he didn't have the mustache." But I'm
Yeah.
like, don't do that. Don't do the Star Wars thing where the guy comes back to life. Don't do
I
that.
do,
Just
I do think he's coming back though, and the reason I say that, the
yeah.
reason I say that is because, and a quick shout out to another great, I'm sure I don't know if you know Christian Harloff, a great guy on YouTube, but he does a lot of Star Wars content too, and he was talking about it in his interview with Katie Sackhoff he just did this week, where he said, you know, you don't see him die, and if you don't see a body in Star Wars,
Right.
95% of the time they're still alive. But even bouncing off what you were just saying about Moff Gideon, not only was it that it seemed like there was more that you were expecting or hoping, I felt like they just rushed into him right away.
Oh, big time.
And what episode was it where they find the ship that he broke out from? Was that episode 5?
Yeah, yeah, I want to say that was 5.
Yeah. If they do that episode like 2 episodes earlier and then build to that, I feel like there's
Hmm.
just so much more to do. And then episode 6, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the one with Jack Black and Lizzo, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was an episode for me that just didn't hit, and it was another side mission, and it was something where it's like, all right, even that episode you could have used to build a little bit more towards Moff instead of using the last 2 episodes that literally is just one episode cut in half
Hmm.
to do this whole thing with him. It's just, and I love Giancarlo Esposito. I love him in that role. I loved his battles with Din in last season. So I don't know, man. It's just I don't know if it's a transitional season. I don't know if it's because again they want to build towards this movie that Filoni's going to do, which I'm super hyped for because I think he's the perfect person to direct it.
Hmm.
Maybe with the exception of Favreau, but I think they're both great. My point is though, you're setting yourself up because how long was it in between seasons? Like a year? More than that.
In real life or in like the actual show?
In
Like
real
years?
in real life. How long are we as fans
I
waiting?
I want to say season 2 came out in like 2021. I
Okay,
want to say.
so 2 years. So let's say it's 2 years. You're waiting for this big season, and then they kind of drop the ball, so to speak. So
Hmm.
unless they have a quick turnaround on season 4,
Right.
or again, like maybe you do, like maybe in Ahsoka you start to see some of these things planted Marvel style, where you have these little
Hmm.
Easter eggs, and again, Star Wars does it too. But if you're going to start having them connect, the other thing you don't want is like you don't want a Boba Fett effect, where it's something like, all right, I don't know if people are really going to dig the show, so let's just put 2 Mandalorian episodes in the middle of it, and
Yeah.
they're fantastic episodes, but that's not the show.
Yeah.
And again, to me, that's a really big disconnective, like creative process. Like how are you guys putting 2 episodes of one show in the middle of another show? It just doesn't make sense to me.
It was the biggest blunder I think Disney Stars has maybe ever made, other than not like fully planning out the sequels, because it not only took away from Book of Boba Fett and that character, it also takes away from your flagship series. Because now, in 20 years, there was just no like planning. Like in 20 years, someone's gonna sit down to watch The Mandalorian and not realize that you have to watch the Book of Boba Fett right between seasons 2 and 3, and they're just gonna watch and they're gonna be like, What just happened? Why are they back together? Why does he have a new ship?" And I think it was just very short term planning. I think there was a lot of Disney executives in the writers' room telling Jon Favreau, "Hey, we need Din Djarin and Grogu together at the start of season 3 because that's going to sell more merch and that's going to sell the show." And they just didn't stick with the creative vision and saying, "No, no, we're going to do it the way we want to do it, and I promise it's going to work out in the end." Because I think if they started with that one episode in the Book of Boba Fett, that first one where it goes directly to the Mando storyline, I think that would have been an incredible season 3 premiere of him
100%.
coming into the room with the dark saber, still not knowing how to wield it, and then by the end of the episode, he gets a Naboo starfighter that's souped up to be like an old Mustang, and it's like that's such a great opening. And then I forget if that episode he fights Paz Vizsla, and the armorer
Yep.
tells him about all that
Yep.
stuff. Like all of that stuff would have led perfectly into a full season about going back to Mandalore, because in that episode you have that flashback to the Night of a Thousand Tears, and you see Mandalore get bombed. Like the the Night of a Thousand Tears is shown in the Book of Boba Fett and not in The Mandalorian, the show
Yeah.
that it's introduced in. It's like it's baffling, but oh my gosh, I could
It
go on
doesn't-
for days
I
about
know
that.
it doesn't make a lot of sense. And the other thing is, like, again, like you were talking about, like having the faith in your creators, like Favreau and Filoni, to do this thing. And there's a sense where it's like you wish they would have more integrity, but at the end of the day, it's like it is a business and it's Disney. And I'm like literally, I'm wearing a Disney shirt right now. Like I love Disney. I love, and I don't care. You can call me a shill, whatever. But like I love everything Disney. But this is, and it's not just a Disney thing; it's a Hollywood thing. But it's a problem because you pigeonhole creators into doing these things. And I think I had heard a rumor somewhere where, and again, I think this has changed anyway because of the way that the show has grown. But I think that Favreau originally intended it for it to just be a 3-season arc of Mandalorian. And if that is the case, that's something that I would be interested in seeing because it has a beginning, middle, and end, which Star Wars doesn't seem to always have. Which is why, again, another reason I love Andor, because we know the ending and then we get to see the prequel, you know, and it's very interesting to me. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think Mandalorian's in a very interesting spot right now, and I think that. What did you think overall about the season? Because I feel like I wouldn't say they lost fans, but I think there was a lot of, again, I think there was a lot of people at the end just being like, and I've never felt that with Mandalorian until this season. And again, like you were just saying, in terms of those 2 episodes being in the middle of Boba Fett, it just would have added to the volume of the season. I mean, I understand if you want to keep the linear aspect, like the first 2 seasons were 8 episodes, so you make season 3 8 episodes. It's season 3, and we're waiting 2 years. Why don't you just add the 2 episodes in the beginning so you have a bang for a beginning? Some of those really good early episodes you push a little bit towards the middle, and then at the end you have this good ending. Like to me, it would have been the perfect time to execute a 10-episode season, a 10-volume chapter season, whatever they call them. Like to me, it would have just been the perfect way to do it. But what were your thoughts on it? Because I'm curious.
I mean, yeah, I think that first part about the Mando episodes in Book of Boba Fett, I think that's why we have an episode like the Jack Black and Lizzo one, because I feel like that was solely there to fill time because they couldn't use that content that was probably originally planned to be in season 3. So then at the end, when it's like, oh, we have to go meet the other Mandalorians, oh, we have to do this side mission. They're right outside the city, but we can't go there because we have to go into the city. Like that felt very much like the most atypical filler ever. Like we literally see the next plot point, it's right there, but we can't go there because of convenience. So yeah, I think like you said before, it felt rushed. I mean, the Moff Gideon, he kind of comes back in and he's gone in the next episode. The clones are introduced in the same scene that they're destroyed in. And in the beginning of the season, we had the first episode, which felt like it was kind of trying to get its footing with the whole IG-11 thing. Like, we need to get this droid that needs to go down into the mines of Mandalore. Okay, IG-11, let's bring him back because Star Wars can't let anyone die. So we'll bring him back. Oh, we don't have this part. Okay, I'll go to the other girl that got him the ship in the first place. Oh, she has a droid. Okay, great. We have this droid. They go to Mandalore. They land. The droid gets out. The droid gets like attacked by those cavemen people, and then Din himself, he checks the atmosphere and he's like, okay, the atmosphere is breathable. So it's like, why did we get the droid in the first place if you could have just checked it yourself? What was the point of the past 2 episodes if it was to do what you just did right there? So I've seen some theories that say that they needed to get a droid companion so that he had someone to talk to because Grogu can't really respond. So they wrote in creatively like, oh, well, we'll have a droid companion that he can talk to because Grogu technically wasn't supposed to be there in the original drafts, they think. They think that Grogu was still supposed to be with Luke at this point, but then Disney execs were like, no, we need Grogu in season 3. So they kind of wrote around it. So that was my overall thoughts. I felt very rushed. I think in the middle of the season, I was really excited. Like the episode The Pirate, where the pirates go to Navarro and they're they're destroying the town, and then the Mandalorian covert goes in, and they go, spec ops, and they kill all the pirates, and then there's the cool dogfight, and they shoot down the ship. Like, that was my favorite part of the season, because I was like, this feels like the Mandalorian, but we're also moving the plot forward. We're getting a new home for the Mandalorians, and yeah, that was like the peak for me. And then after that, it was just kind of a mixed bag. And unfortunately, yeah, by the end, it kind of felt more closely to Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, where like the quality didn't feel like season 1 or 2. And that's unfortunate, because Mandalorian always felt like that gold standard, and it kind of feel like it came down from that, which was really disappointing.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So we've been kind of talking about Andor a lot in the background, but I really want to dive in on Andor here and talk about Rogue One and your relationship with Rogue One. If you were excited for Andor, if you were as surprised as I guess everyone else was when Andor was as good as it was, even though Rogue One I still think is the strongest of the Disney Star Wars films. You might say it's Force Awakens because of your connection to it, but I just wanted to hear your overall thoughts on that double combo right now, with Andor and Rogue One being some of the strongest stuff we have right now in Star Wars.
Yeah, I think sometimes I forget, and it's not even in a weird way, because Rogue One I do love, and I would say it's a better movie than Force Awakens, and it's actually probably higher in my rankings if I was to rank also the spin-off films.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Force Awakens does have that very interesting feel for me, a lot more than it does, I feel like, a lot of other people. But Rogue One was even a surprise for me. Like I loved I loved the trailers for it, and I was excited for it. But there was a lot of, I mean, even with that film and Solo, like there was a lot of problems with the production, and it got me really worried. And you come to find out later that Gareth Edwards probably didn't direct most of that movie. And Tony Gilroy is the guy who did Andor, correct?
Yeah, he's the showrunner.
Yeah. The showrunner. He also created the show, and he directed a lot. He wrote most of the episodes. But there was a lot of, he came in at the end of Rogue One's filming to kind of take over in terms of directing. And I always thought that was very interesting, but I loved the Rogue One. And again, it was weird because even my intro to Andor, like you said, I was surprised by it, but it was not something that was even on my radar. Like Obi-Wan to me I was like, dude, Obi-Wan Kenobi is back. Holy shit. Like I couldn't even believe it. And Andor, even the character of Cassian Andor, not that I didn't like him in Rogue One, but he was not probably even amongst my top 3 favorite characters in that film. So it was interesting to see a whole series based around him. But the thing that I love that Gilroy talks so much about with Andor, and why I love it so much, is it is Star Wars baked in the reality of what the world is. It's not a show that is based around the Jedi. It's not a show that's based around the Sith. And trust me, I love that, because that is Star Wars. Those are elements of Star Wars. But like you were saying, even in terms of like the Peabody Award before, like there is a critical mass appeal to the fact that they have something that still feels so Star Wars, but is so entirely different than anything they've ever done. And that grounded, and you could still have fun with it too. Like I remember, I forget what episode it was, but I remember the episode where they start on that planet, and I think it was a new planet, where it literally is like Miami Beach for Star Wars. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And that intro, dude, I was like, this is so not Star Wars, but it's so cool, and it's so Star Wars at the same time.
Yeah.
That there's so many elements of that show, and it's a show, even in terms of my passion for it, how much I love it, that I remember the most from that show. Like I remember moments from that show in abundance. And then again, in Mandalorian, I felt like that in the first 2 seasons too. But even with this current past season, I don't think there's going to be a lot that sticks with me. With Andor, it was such a well-written show, and it was paced perfectly. And again, it had that structural thing, which goes back to what we were talking about before with the planning of Lucasfilm, right? Like Tony Gilroy had a plan. He had a very distinct plan. He was doing it in 3 episode chunks, and it had a beginning, middle, and end to that. And that all built to a finale. And guess what? We're getting a whole nother season of that, which again, as long as the suits don't come in and try to mess it up,
right,
we're going to see that again. And again, there's no expectation, because we know what the ending for this character is. We saw Rogue One. So I absolutely love the show.
Hmm.
It was in my top 10 for the year. I don't know. I don't remember off the top of my head, and I don't want to take a because we're in the middle of a conversation. I don't want to take a look, but it was in I think my top 5 of the year last year in terms of all television.
Nice.
So the show in general is just everything about it to me is, again, it's dark, it's gritty, but there are fun elements, and the writing is so tight, and the editing is great, and the environments are awesome, and it's practical, and
Hmm.
it just feels so Star Wars, but so different that I'm like, oh my god, man, like this is exactly what I want to see more of, like rebel spies and seeing that element of it. Stellan Skarsgård's character is balls to the wall, amazing,
Hmm.
like holy shit. So that whole show, I mean, like I have a really really deep love and appreciation for Andor. I really really do.
Yeah, and there's so many things I want to dive in from that. But yeah, I think the first thing I want to talk about is Andor as a character. I think there was a lot of fatigue from the other character shows that Star Wars had done, and they hadn't gone out well, like with Book of Boba Fett, like Obi-Wan. You see those shows, and you're like, well, these are characters that are easy home runs, and they fumbled those. So, like, what are they possibly doing with Andor? And then you kind of take the other way of looking at, like, oh, that's why Andor works, because you wouldn't expect a show about him, because it's not a money grab to be like, oh, let's do a show about Andor, that one character from Rogue One. But yeah, I was super skeptical because when I watched Rogue One, I was like, I feel like Andor's character is complete. I'm like, I get him already. Like he's been in this fight since he was a kid. He was reluctant. Now he's all in. He'll do the bad things to make sure the rebels win. Like I felt like I understood him, and then Tony Gilroy was like, no, no, let me show you how to extend a character arc even further. And I love when he talks about Andor as a show being planned out. He's like, I have never made it a secret. The final shot of our show will be Andor walking to the ship to go and run into Jin on that planet. I forget what the planet's called, but he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I know the ending, and I'm telling you the ending of the show because we know exactly where we're going. And yeah, like you said, next season is going to be 3 episode chunks, year, I think a year between each 3 episode chunk in
Mm-hmm.
in universe, and it's just going to be on a whole other level. It's going to be even bigger. It's going to be even more bombastic because now the rebellion is out of the shadows. Like the rebellion is working in tandem together against the Empire. So it's just gonna like the stakes are gonna be through the roof. And I love Mon Mothma. She's like my favorite part of that show
Oh, she
because
was also
she's
so good.
just fantastic.
All the political intrigue that comes with all of her scenes,
Yeah.
awesome. And like, I want to go back to something you just said really quick,
Hmm.
because I think it's really interesting how you just put it in terms of Rogue One with Cassian. It's like you knew his character already. What they were able to do was so much harder, at least again on paper. We're not in the writer's room, but it's like you turned a one note character into somebody that you made every single person that watched that show care about.
Hmm.
And with like again, go and I know I'm harping on Obi-Wan, and I don't completely dislike the show, but there's just a lot of structural things I have issue with. But with Obi-Wan, it's a beloved character that everybody just wanted one excuse me, one more experience with. And Ewan had such a great job filming, but they how do you drop the ball on that in comparison to like this is a harder job? And I think the cool thing about Gilroy, and this is what I really feel with Star Wars, you bring in somebody that has an appreciation for storytelling and the ability of how deep and connected Star Wars storytelling has been for decades since George, right? But Gilroy obviously has a respect for the world, but he's not like a diehard Star Wars person, and he doesn't need to be. He knows how to write a really good story about really good characters baked into this world, and then you're gonna have elements like people that work on the show, like the production designers and the art directors that do these things like the scenes in the gallery that are so Easter egg filled that I mean, even I don't understand all the references. I have to go back and watch YouTube videos to find out. And now I have you as a reference, so I can text you about every single one. But it's like I don't understand this whole like fascination with we have to get somebody that's so baked into the lore in order to tell a good Star Wars story.
Hmm.
And that's why I'm really excited about what James Mangold is hopefully going to do, because I think James Mangold is a terrific director too, and he showed it with Logan and Ford versus Ferrari that he's just a great director. Tony Gilroy is a very, very, very esteemed writer, and he was able to create this out of a character that even the most diehard of fans like you You're like, I know his story already. Like, I'm not really that interested in him. And why would you be? There's thousands of characters across Star Wars, some in Legends that haven't even been on screen yet that you probably want to see. But then there's other characters that it's like, oh, I wish I saw a little bit more from this one. I saw a little bit more from that one. Like, they were able to make something out of nothing, so to speak. And they not only made it into something, they made it into probably, arguably, the best Star Wars show ever made. You
Hmm.
know?
Yeah, there's so many things about Andor. I think I'll harp on Obi-Wan too, because when Tony Gilroy talks about like the process of making Andor, like I'll just point out the prison sequence, that whole arc. He's like, he could have made it very simple. He could have been, okay, prison, typical prison, put him in the cells, make him go to work in the day, come back, they start a rebellion, okay. But he's like, no, we have to do a prison different than anyone has ever done a prison in media. And then when I look at Obi-Wan, and it's just they go into Fortress Inquisitorius and then they just walk out with Leia under his coat. I'm like the levels of care and thought that go into both of those arcs or that those pieces of the show. It just shows like such a difference, and it makes me really upset because I'm just like how can we not hold everything to that standard? Like that's what it should be. You go have like a show like Andor where everything is meticulously planned out, and then you have a show like Obi-Wan where it's just convenience writing. It's like, oh, okay, well, they just get out this way or they just get out this way. And it's just, that's where people are upset about things. And other people are like, oh, you guys just hate Star Wars. It's like, no, like there could be so much better. I promise you guys, it could be so much better. And yeah, the other thing I wanted to talk that you brought up about with the practical effects of Andor, and I just want to hear your thoughts on it, is the volume. Do you think the volume is taking away from some of these the feel of some of these Star Wars TV shows because Andor filming on site, having these massive sets compared to even Mandalorian this season, where I feel like you can tell that there's a small set and then there's that screen in the background. Do you notice that when you're watching, or do you feel like those practical effects, at least in the environment, are taking away from some of these shows?
I think I think visual effects in general, I'm very curious on the way that they're going with things post COVID because
Mm,
when Mandalorian season one came out, the volume was a very big talking point. And it was a great talking point because it was something that we haven't seen before. And I think it shows really well when we have these big landscapes. Uh, but again, I appreciate, as someone who used to be a filmmaker and like still works in media, like I appreciate the practical element to it. I don't think it's 100% necessary all the time.
mhm,
But again, I think that sometimes there's a situation where we have a character with Din where there's three people playing the character. And in the interview Katie just did with that guy Christian as well, she talks about how like they have two sets and she can't be in two places at once. So a lot of times you have multiple people playing the same character. And sometimes you can't tell, and sometimes you can definitely tell.
mhm.
And I have an appreciation for what the volume has accomplished. And I think the problem is more so the rushing element of it, which upsets me more based on what you're saying, because I do seem to notice the volume more so this past season than the previous seasons. But to me, it's like, I don't know if that is something because they were rushing, or again, it's because they just overloaded their plate. I mean, look how many shows they've had to push because of COVID. Look how many shows that they're working on currently. I mean, I'm really excited for what they're going to do with a lot of these other shows, and I'm curious. But again, the visual effects part of it too, like Marvel is now doing this thing where again they're scaling back. They're like, no, 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 no. We just released 13 projects in 1 year. Like that's a problem, and we're aware of it, and the fans don't like us anymore, so it's time to backtrack. Star Wars again, I think has had a little bit more of a bumpy road getting to where we're at now. But again, yeah, I think that the volume takes away a lot of that personal connection you have to these characters. Again, I didn't feel, and I don't know if it's a thing because again, it didn't seem like Din was written as the main character this season, which is, I don't have as much of a problem with that because again, the show was called The Mandalorian and his name
Mhm.
is Din, and Bo-Katan is also a Mandalorian, so I get it. But my issue with it is more so that if you're going to take away the elements of what makes you like the character, then why have the character at all? Like
Mhm.
I'm not campaigning to kill off Din, but if he's going to be sidelined and you're going to again take away even the element of the environment and what he provides to that environment, then what is the point? You know? And
Mhm.
I think that the volume does take away a lot of that. Uh even, and again, like it's something as little as like when Bo is sitting on the throne, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, a lot of that is not practical, but
Hmm.
I can almost guarantee you that the throne is practical,
Right.
and you can tell. And
Hmm.
there's a statement there, and that's a symbol, and that's something that's a graphic that again will stick in my head, right? There's a scene in season one when he's with Queel. Is that how you say Queel, right? Nick Nolte's character.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, when they're in the desert, or again, I'm so bad with planets, dude. Like it's you just
Hmm.
about what planet are they on?
I think that was Navarro.
Navarro, right?
Yeah,
So
I
they're in
believe so.
Navarro, and you have this giant landscape, and it's just this little camp and this giant landscape. And in shots like that, the volume looks beautiful.
Right.
And there's other times again where it just kind of puts their put it's to me it seems like they put the actors in a corner, and it's
Hmm.
they don't really know how to navigate it. And some of them say that they like it, and I'm not saying that they don't. I can't speak for them. But as a viewer, yeah, it's getting to a point now where it's like I would so much rather the practical. And Star Wars
Right.
is built on practical,
Hmm.
like my favorite one of my favorite things about Star Wars in general is I don't know if you had a chance to watch on Disney Plus the Lucasfilm doc. It's
It's on my watch list.
dude,
I need to
it's
watch it.
fantastic. But the coolest part about it is you see the process of them making Star Wars, like real Star Wars from the beginning, practical effects, and figuring out how to make things work. And to me, like you just alluded to with the jail sequence in Andor, that was such a determined vision. Like he had an idea and he's like, well, all right, well, we're not doing it until we have it perfect. With Mandalorian, again, it just feels like, and I don't know if it's because, like I said, it's an overlap with all these shows when you have so many different production crews and Dave Filoni jumping from set to set, like
Hmm.
it's going to cause issues in terms of your quality. And at
Yeah.
least trust me, I love Star Wars. I love Marvel. I love film. I love television. I would so much rather quality than quantity. I
Big time.
promise you. Even if it's a show that, again, like Andor, we're going to get 2 seasons of it, and I'm going to be like, I can't believe that I'm never going to be able to watch a new episode of the show. But I will go back and watch that show now so many times because it's so brilliant. The first
Hmm.
season is so brilliant that that's what sticks out to me. So yeah, the volume, I think, definitely a long-winded answer, but I think that the
Yeah.
volume
No.
the volume had a lot of issues this season that stuck out to me.
Yeah, no, all of it was definitely relevant, and it might just be our trained eye because the volume was brand new technology when we first saw the Mandalorian, so we're like, oh wow, this is amazing. It looks like he's in that environment, and now having 3 seasons under our belt, maybe we're just better at acknowledging it's there now because we're like, okay, no, I get how it works. I see that that's the practical part of the set, that's the volume, and just thought it was funny because this is this new technology, but then when I think back to the prequels, which were, I mean, I would say all green screen except for maybe a couple scenes in each of them. And I don't feel like there's that disconnect when I go back and watch the prequels. And I know that's a movie budget, so that's totally different, but that's like
Mm.
2005, 2003, like that's very early in the CGI era and it's all green screen. And somehow I felt like the Mandalorian and these recent Disney Plus shows that are using the volume, I feel like it's even more you could see it even easier than back then, which is kind of crazy to say, but I would be curious to see what other people think about that. But yeah, the volume is definitely like for the night scenes, for the armor. I mean, like you said with Din, like when he's on camera and you have those volume scenes where you have that natural lighting reflecting off the armor, it looks amazing. But then there's other scenes where it's like that would have been cool if they were like on an actual site, like in Andor when they're on the side of a mountain, or in the prequels or the originals when they're on Tatooine, they're literally in Tunisia and they're just out
Yeah.
in the middle of a desert. Like that's really cool and you can tell. So, I hope that in the future, I know it's a big ask because it's like, well, you have the volume, you have the sets. Why would you travel across the world to get like 2 shots? I get it. Like logistically, it makes more sense. But another part of me is like, I really want that Andor feel. And the Acolyte, my most anticipated Star Wars show coming out, is the same. They're building the sets. It's all practical. They're not using the volume, which I'm like, that's a sign now for me. If they're not using the volume, I'm like, that's a sign that that show is going to be probably above the quality of most of the other ones.
Yeah, and I think in terms of what you were saying too, it's like I think that the feature films is going to be a big part of that too. Like again, we're talking about feature budgets, so I understand if you want to use the volume for pickups, like that makes sense. Like you don't
Hmm.
want to travel somewhere and then when you do reshoots, go back. But I mean, if the films have these bigger budgets and they're not doing things practically, I'm going to be very curious because even seeing I have you had a chance to see any of the series on a big screen before?
Oh, like Star Wars itself? Or you're
Like
saying which
I'm saying like any of the Disney Plus shows. Have you seen like an episode of a show on the big screen? Have
oh
you ever?
no.
Neither have I, but I'm curious because they
Mm,
do it, you know, like they do it at celebrations sometimes, they do it at premieres, right?
right.
I'm
Yeah.
very curious to see how that plays on the screen because again, so much of it is volume. So if they decide to use the volume sparingly in the films that are going to come out, then I think that's okay. If they
Hmm.
decide to use the volume for anything more than like 40% of the movie, I think it's going to be very noticeable and I think it's going to take the viewer out of it. And I don't know, man. It's like you said, it's an interesting technology that maybe our eyes have adjusted to at this point. And I don't know. I again, it's part of this whole hodgepodge that we've been talking about. It's like we love Star Wars, but there's a lot of worry to be had. You
Yeah.
know,
It
like
hasn't been consistent enough.
no, I would say that's the perfect way to describe it. It's just it's highs and lows, man, and it's weird because again, like you were saying with those three like Mandalorian was such a high, and then even within Book of Boba Fett, you have two episodes that are Mandalorian episodes that are so great, and then some episodes of Boba Fett that I think I like Boba Fett more than most did, but again, I do recognize the valleys that that show has.
Hmm.
And Obi-Wan was a disappointment, and then you come out with Andor, and then again you're building off of the emphasis of how great Andor was, and then you come out with your weakest Mandalorian season. Like that's
Yeah.
again, you're getting your viewer like it's a frustrating thing as a viewer and someone
Hmm.
that again who's not a diehard but is trying to keep being excited about Star Wars. As you said, like we started this conversation, I was so excited for Star Wars that I put out TikToks and Instagram reels about how excited I was about Mandalorian. And very quickly I was like, I'm not even as interested as I was 2 weeks ago. And that's a
Hmm.
problem because I'm not even, again, I'm not a casual fan. I'm that in between. But like, if you're losing me, then I can't imagine what the casuals think.
You're definitely losing the casuals there. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
exactly. And so we've been talking about a lot of future Star Wars projects. Do you have ones that you're really looking forward to? I know you said the James Mangold one about the Dawn of the Jedi. Any other ones that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, so Acolyte, I don't know for some reason why it escaped my memory. And I think when I said Skeleton Crew before, I meant Acolyte. I'm also very excited for Acolyte. I love the cast for it.
Hmm.
Ahsoka, I thought the trailer was fantastic. But again, with little to no Clone Wars or Rebels reference, it's hard for
Yeah.
me to have a real reference point into that period. But I think it's really cool to an extent. It's like I feel like a fake fan sometimes because it's like my introduction to these characters is in live action. But like Cad Bane was a character in Boba Fett that I had never even seen.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the visual of that character, I was like, oh my God, who is this? And I felt that way somewhat with this. Like I had a freak out moment for Ahsoka, but again, it wasn't the same freak out moment that I had for Luke, which I don't know if it was for anybody, but I know that Ahsoka is near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. So I'm very excited about that series. Skeleton Crew, I'm curious about because they say it's basically like the Stranger Things of the Star Wars universe, and Stranger Things is one of my favorite shows of all time. So being able, again, if they can really encompass that theme, and I like Jude Law as an actor, but I'm curious to see some of these other cameos. I know they announced Carrie Condon is going to be in it,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
she was in Banshees of Inisherin, which I
I
love.
thought she was the best part. Yeah. I
Yeah,
loved her in
so
that.
so so I'm excited to see her in it. But yeah, in terms of the movies, I would say Dawn of the Jedi I'm probably the most excited about because I just have such a deep appreciation for James Mangold as a director. And
Hmm.
again, he reminds me more of the Gilroys that I think he can really make a really great film first that just happens to be in the Star Wars universe. I am excited to see what they do with the movie with Rey. I was more excited when Damon Lindelof was attached
Right.
because I don't know if you had a chance or you've seen Watchmen on HBO, and he also did The Leftovers. But he's another one that again he reminds me of that dark and gritty sort of something that would work within Star Wars, like that we haven't seen enough of. And I love Rey as a character, so I'm curious about that one. But Dawn of the Jedi would probably be the one that I'm most anticipating, and then after that, I'd probably go Acolyte. I'd probably go
Yeah.
Acolyte next. I don't know enough about Acolyte to talk about it, but
Hmm.
I'm curious because it's again we're playing in this realm that we haven't seen before, and that excites me. you know?
That's what I'm most excited about. I'm always an advocate for Star Wars doing something brand new, getting away from characters we all know about, because then that creates expectations for those characters. And if you touch them and you do it wrong, everyone gets mad. So I'm just like, let them be, let the characters rest, and go somewhere else. And to be honest, most people don't know much about Acolyte because it's at the end of the High Republic, which is the book series, and the High Republic ends essentially before this really happens. So there's really nothing canon there, which is really cool to explore. Yeah, now the Rey one, I definitely think is interesting, but it has to be good because it's the first movie that they're going to release. So they must be very confident in what they want to tell there. Hopefully, they have a plan. You never know. But yeah, they have Stephen Knight, Phil Knight, the guy who writes Peaky Blinders. He's the
Yes,
new
he
writer.
came on. Yeah, he came
He's
on
now the new
to
writer.
replace Lindelof.
So that's very interesting, Peaky Blinders and and Star Wars. But yeah, they must be confident in it because that's a tough movie to sell because there's a lot of people that don't like the sequels, and now you're saying the first movie you're gonna see is gonna be based on the sequel stuff after a couple years off. So I mean, it's a risk, but they must be confident in it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good Star Wars on the horizon conceptually, but again, with what we've seen with the highs and lows, you just never know, unfortunately, because the Skeleton Crew could be Stranger Things, Goonies. It could reach those heights, or it could kind of be like Obi-Wan. But the one saving grace that I've been kind of privy to over these past couple years is when Disney does stuff other than the sequels. Forget the sequels. When Disney does stuff with original characters made by Disney, it actually turns out well. So Andor, Disney original character. Rogue One, Disney original character. Solo, Legends character. Sequels, you bring
Yeah.
in some Legends characters. Obi-Wan, Book of Boba Fett. Mandalorian season 1 and 2, great. Season 3, they kind of dropped off. But all characters that are created by Disney, things actually go pretty well for him. So we'll see how it goes in the future with those. But this has been great so far. So I think we're gonna go to my favorite part of these episodes, and that's hearing your Star Wars movie rankings. You can definitely include Rogue One and Solo if you'd like. If you don't want to include them, that's fine. I usually leave it up to you guys.
I'm gonna include them just for the sake. I feel like it's gonna be easier for me to rank.
Got it.
For the viewer, for the listener, I did not prepare ahead of time, but I'm gonna try to do this off the top of my head.
That's all right.
So Empire Strikes Back is number one.
Oh, we're going top first. All right, love it.
Oh, sorry. Do we usually go in reverse?
We go reverse, but that's fine. If you want to go down, you'll be the first
All
one to go
right,
the other way.
I think it's just gonna be easier if I do it that way.
Okay, so Empire number one.
Empire is number one. And I won't give too many blurbs on them because I've already been talking too much. Empire would be number one. Number two for me would probably be Revenge of the Sith.
Nice.
I would probably put Rogue One number three.
Mm.
Number four, I would probably go A New Hope. Number five, I would go Force Awakens. Then I would probably go Return of the Jedi.
Wow.
All right, so now I have Solo, I have Attack of the Clones, I have Phantom Menace, and then Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably go Solo. And that is mostly picked because I love Donald Glover so much and everything.
Okay.
And he's so great as Lando. And I think the only major issue with that is just Alden is not playing Han. He's just playing a different character. That's that's the biggest problem with the movie. But I think a lot of it I actually really enjoy. After that, I'd probably go. Oh boy, this is where it gets tough for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably go Rise of Skywalker.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's a very interesting list.
This is an interesting list, yeah.
Then I would go Attack of the Clones. Then I would go The Last Jedi, and then I would go Phantom Menace. I do not like Phantom Menace whatsoever.
Wow. No love for Darth Maul.
No, and I love Maul, but I think that's literally the only good scene in the movie. And it's not even a Jar Jar thing either, because I know everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, Jar Jar hater." No, that's not what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think structurally the movie doesn't work like a lot. So I do apologize for going in reverse order, but
oh no, that's fine.
that is probably the way that I would do it off the top of my head, and that bottom could probably switch out most of them except for Menace because it just depends on my mood. I love the battle sequence of Attack of the Clones.
Right.
Last Jedi again. I think because this is a Star Wars movie ranking, it has to be bottom two for me because it's not a Star Wars movie to me. And then in terms of Rise of Skywalker, that's one of the ones that I've only seen like only a couple of times. And I know it's not great, but there are moments of it that for me redeem eight a little bit. Like it kind of like washes eight away. So I'm like, all right, I would probably go Rise of Skywalker where I listed it.
Yeah, no, it's good to always hear different lists because sometimes they can kind of fall into very, the same things. You're hearing the same ones over and over again, and it's funny. Four, A New Hope, always ends up at four for people. I don't know why that happens, but it's number four on my list, and a lot of people when they come on, it's number four on their list. So I always think it's funny when four is four. But yeah, Empire Strikes Back and Revenge of the Sith. Whether that's just the generation we're in or not, it's always those two that are vying for number one and number two. For me, Return of the Jedi is my favorite movie, so I'm going to be seeing that this weekend for its 40th
Nice.
anniversary in the movie theater, which is going to be like an out of body experience because Empire Strikes Back a couple years for their 40th anniversary in the movie theater. That was one of the best movie experiences I've ever had. I was like, wow, this is incredible. But yeah, I just love how they wrap up the trilogy. But yeah, Solo being that high, that's definitely like a new one for me because I know a lot of people either leave that off the ranking or that it's usually at the bottom. And Solo, I've only seen it once, which is really surprising for a Star Wars fan. But I've only seen it once, and I think it's just for me. I just didn't want to see original trilogy characters recast in
Yeah.
a time period that's very close to the original trilogy. Like Ewan McGregor being cast as Obi-Wan in a younger age, like that. Yeah, that makes sense. You need a new, like obviously, but
Yeah.
Alden Ehrenreich, is that his last name?
Yes.
Ehrenreich.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like that was like a 2 year gap between A New Hope and Harrison Ford, like and this movie. So I was just like, I don't know. I'm like looking for Harrison, but that's not Harrison. So that was the issue there. But I thought he was fine in the role. I thought the movie was fun. I was just like, I fundamentally disagree with recasting an original trilogy character in the same time period as that character. So that was my big gripe with it. But yeah, I love the list. It's an interesting list, and it's a true to you list because you've kind of developed this love of Star Wars over time. It wasn't something you grew up with, where it was like you watched all the movies by the time you were 11. Like you saw one, took some time, saw the next couple, next couple. So that's an interesting list, and I feel like it kind of represents your fandom well, which is really cool.
Awesome. And yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think that again, it's peaks and valleys, right? Like even certain viewing experiences I have with some of these movies, they change over time. Like I said, Solo, the first time I saw it, I didn't love it.
Yeah.
Second time I saw it, I liked it a little bit more, you know. Last Jedi is one that every time I've seen it, I seem to dislike it even more. And again, it's not really it's not an issue with it structurally as a movie. It's more so again, it's like I just don't view it as a Star Wars movie.
Mhm.
A New Hope, yeah, I mean, A New Hope is great, and I do agree with what you're saying. With and again, this is kind of telling of me, like in terms of knowing the lore. Like I didn't recognize or realize that Solo takes place like 2 years in timeline before A New Hope. So like that would maybe change it for me because again, I would agree like that for me doesn't seem to work. I think Donald Glover does a really good job as Lando when he kind of resembles that character a lot more than Alden does. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, I think there's for me, I think that that's kind of where the gap starts anyway. Like I feel
Right.
like right at that point, it's like there's a little bit of a drop off that's noticeable once
Hmm.
I had Solo on the list. So that's
Yeah.
it.
Awesome, man. Well, is there anything else you wanted to talk about Star Wars wise before we wrap this up? I've had a lot of fun, and this has been really great to just like deep dive into all of these shows. I love how different interviews kind of go over. I mean, some people we talk about a show for a while and then jump to a next one, but I feel like with this one we've dove real deep into each show that we really love, which I've really enjoyed. But is there anything else that you wanted to bring up?
No, man, we went all over the place.
Yeah.
We went all over the place conceptually, and we went all over the
Yeah.
place, and we worked it out. We executed it. So I think this was a really fun time, and I really thank you for welcoming me on the pod. And I'd love to be on again. I'd love to do more stuff with you. So this was really fun, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Darian, again. And I hope everyone has enjoyed this interview. Follow my Instagram for more at star_wars_mark of balance. As always, thank you guys so much for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may the force be with you. Peace.